Going into Great Race this year, I'm a little bit nervous. It's my first Great Race, but I'm also very excited. I have a great teammate, Marcus Skinner. He has a bit of experience as well as a throttleman, but he's now my driver. And we have prepared the boat. It's working beautifully. The whole week it's been running really well. We're just hoping that the weather is not as bad as it was today's testing and hope to win our class.
Last time I raced was 1999. It was in Key West, and this boat ran, a boat similar to this ran, and it ran really well. So I'm excited to get into this same hull and run it up the North Coast where it takes the rough water well.
We feel quite confident. We did a lot of work on the boat. The boat is prepared. We went through all the systems, tightened down everything, made sure everything was secure, working well. We think once we get a good start in the race tomorrow, we should do quite well coming into Tobago.
Going into Great Race this year, I think Fire One is ready. We've been trying to get ready for this race since last year's race. We took the engines out after the race last year and we have prepped this boat from top to bottom. Reliability and durability to us, or for us, is what is going to win this race. Maybe we're not the fastest boat out there, we're not the biggest boat out there, but our plan is to finish, and in order to win, you're gonna have to finish. Yeah.
Well, the start of this race, we very nearly didn't start because up to 10 minutes before the race, we were still fixing electrical problems. Those little electrical gremlins were in the engine. And we were scrambling up to 10 minutes before the race until we hot-wired the electrics, gave it a boost, and off we went.
Well, the funny thing is that when we were waiting for the start of the race, we were getting texts from various people. Many of the texts said, water, we have water to deal with, so that's what we wanted. So we were happy for that.
It's a new start, like a running start now. There's no 2-minute flag and all that. So we got off to a fantastic start. In fact, we couldn't see anybody next to us or around us. We just headed off and we couldn't see anyone around us at all. But the boat went beautifully, sailed through the water like a knife through butter, and everything was perfect.
This year, I think the start was a pretty fair start for all the classes. We were all kind of in a line when they dropped the flag. And of course, we expected Solo, with the power that they're running in that hull, to bust out in front. And almost from the get-go, they were on the move.
Right, you know, we're not allowed to go beyond 130, right? But we reached 130, yes. And maybe a little touch beyond on occasion, which we had to adjust quickly. But we were running quite nice all the way out to the Boca, and there were no fishermen on the points to throw us off our track.
Our plan was basically to sort of stay with Monster and Solo in the calm. But obviously, we figured that we'd have to let the race unfold and decide how things were going to go once we got out down the north. We started and we were jostling with Monster. We were running speeds in the mid 125, 126. We weren't getting anywhere near 130. And the distance that Solo was putting on Monster on us, you know, the thought was crossing my mind, are these guys under 130, boy, or not? But we weren't around 130, so we were kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. There must be bigger, experienced team like that. They must be within the speed.
The Boca was rolly. The sleeping policemen were out.
Yeah, I think when we came around the Point Billing, Solo was probably going through the Boca.
When we went round Point Belen, and as we went round Point Belen, the first year went round Point Belen and felt the water left immediately. So as it left it immediately, I said, well, listen, we won't catch him by the Boca. If we won't catch him, but he was that far ahead, and we couldn't catch him by the Boca.
We were perfectly happy to let Monster take the lead through the Boca there. We kind of expected that the Boca was going to be full of boats even more than last year. And even though, you hope that there is a path, there always seems to be a path, but you never know until you're on it whether they have a path, whether somebody's in the way. So, I mean, that's a point in the race that you want to take extra care.
We went in a little bit fast, and I think we caught a few little flights going into the Boca. We pulled that back and got that under control, and then tried to settle down to head towards the exit. Again, the water was a little bit unpredictable, so we started flying a little bit again. And as soon as we reached out towards the exit, there's this white boat in the middle of the exit. And we decided, where do we go, left, right? What the hell is he doing in the middle of the exit? So we made a quick adjustment to the left and just went by him by about 100 yards. Quite scary. But going up to the Boca, you don't see the exit, right? As I told you before. You only see the exit when you get at the exit and you turn right. And then you know the exit is there, but all those boats block you. So it's quite a hairy experience, yes?
So we continued on, and then we kept seeing a splash, but we were just taking our time and pacing ourselves. We knew it was just a matter of time. We were surprised actually how fast we got up.
But when we hit the Boca there, I said, oh my God, we gonna have to do this. I remember looking at you and saying, James, an hour this way?
Well, they didn't pass us immediately. Huh? We had a little bit of the north coast to ourselves. Huh? We got up past towards Macquarie, and we were running out front. We were getting a little bit lonely, and we decided to wait for a little bit of company. So all of a sudden, Monster comes up on the inside, and he passed us. And I don't know if he kicked up some big wake or something, or some monster god came against us in the sea. We did a right hook as he passed us, which was caught on his camera. And that was another hairy experience. It's looking like a hairy great race, huh?
Well, actually, I remember Peter saying running up behind his wake helped a little bit with us seeing the swells a little better. So that's exactly what we did. We ran up behind him. And then I remember asking him, you want me to take him on the right or the left?
Actually, we didn't intend to pass him that quickly. You know, we were going to look at him for a little while and see how he was running and we didn't think we would pass him that easily. But so I was waiting to answer the question which side, and then I said, well, okay, I guess we're going to pass him on the right side because we were passing him. By the time I actually made the decision, you know, that we should be passing him, we were actually passing him already, so there was no decision to be made.
But that was his tactic. He wanted to run in front, and we wanted to run a little bit behind him, you know, just to have a little company up the north coast. So he got a nice distance ahead, and after he passed us, the sea conditions worsened a bit. The sea started getting choppy, so which just sort of held us back from catching him. So in effect, what he did, put a sea barrier between us and him. Great tactics. I would say it's genius, but I can't say that.
Probably doing just about the mid-90s when we passed him.
Yeah.
And then when we realized that we were getting a nice little distance, settled back down to like high 80s, 90, and slowly kind of held it mostly in the 80s, you know.
And just watching your rearview mirrors from then on, you know. Guys in the back, that was their main task. Just make sure you don't sneak up on us. Nobody sneaking past.
The north coast was really, it's like a washing machine. It wasn't big waves, but it was all messed up. It was just coming from all different angles and directions. And that's probably why we did that hook. Because, you know, you're running along in some sort of rhythm, and all of a sudden there's a hole. You get holes in the sea. And that thing just throws you. I mean, it's like hitting an S-curve out in the middle of the ocean. So that water was just churning itself up and doing all sorts of craziness.
We were struggling the whole probably 50, 55 miles an hour. We could have probably pushed a lot harder to get it up to a higher speed, but we entered the race knowing that we would have most likely have a problem with our drive or our prop. So we said that we would have taken it easy to ensure that we would have reached Tobago. So we really didn't try to put too much stress on the equipment going up the road. But we had a damaged trim tab. We only realized in Tobago, and the boat was only landing to the starboard side, and we, for some reason, were trying all how to rectify what the problem was. Only when we reached Tobago, we realized that the trim tab was not working. But trying to keep it in line with that tab was more work for me than I was anticipating to do.
Last year was rough, boy. I thought it was the roughest I've seen it, but this year, plenty worse. The conditions outside there, we were being thrown from every angle. Water coming from the front, from the side. From the time you get accustomed to one setting of water changing. In the boat, the first time in the 70 mile an hour in that boat. So adjustments we were trying to make going up the road, but we were quite comfortable at the speed we were doing because we were taking it slow this year. We weren't really trying to push too hard to mash up anything before we get accustomed to the boat. But with the new configuration this year, the boat is totally different. Totally different. The balance was different. The way the boat re-entered the water, from the steering go back to the throttling, everything was completely different. The boat was jumping nice and level, but we had the power to continue over the waves this year.
Coming up to Maracas, we started to see a couple of the boats coming up on us because we were in front of them, and we saw a whole group. It was about 3 of them, 80 mile an hour boats. Global warmer passed first, and then we saw White Heat, and Hammer Time was a little way behind, but they were right there. And we loosened up the boat a little bit to keep with them, make a good show. ran into Maracas. Well, that's normally where we get a little calmer water than out in the north. So we were able to loosen up the boat a little bit and hold on to them, kind of. It was a nice run going in with them because, you know, out in the water there, you don't really have much boats out there with you. So seeing those boats running with them was pretty fun. Going into Maracas, it is one of the spectator views, so you want to put on a good show. So you get the adrenaline rush when you see all the boats alongside you. You're trying to stay with them. You don't want to fall back. I mean, that's one of the most exciting parts of Great Race.
So we took our time, going up to Maracas, and then, but it was bagging a lot, all the way up to Maracas, and into Maracas it wasn't too bad. Coming back out of Maracas, again, banging all the way up the north coast, and we were banging, and I say my seat was bottoming out a few times, and the softer man, which is Scott, his seat was bottoming out a lot because his seat was adjusted, a little too soft. But you didn't know that, and it's hard to go and try these things out, in the North Coast all the time. And those conditions were very unusual. I think probably the roughest that we've seen. We kept going and kept it easy, and then when we got a chance to increase the speed, we did, but that didn't come till almost Tobago. You hit a wave and you're going 1, 2, 3, when we're going to land, and knowing that when you land, it's going to be hard. So you brace for it. Eventually, both of us actually were putting our feet on the ground, trying to absorb as much of the shock as possible. Well, going up the north, we were trying to hold, we're actually right down to about 60, sometimes 55. We're trying to get up to 70, but every time we approached 70, we were just bagging too much. And the race is about getting there. More than you've got to keep your boat together.
Going up the north coast and whatnot, we found that it handled the waves, it handled the water, and it was a very rough race this year. And, she ran as expected. The speeds we were trying to hold on the north coast were, I'd say it was around 55 to 85. That'd been the most that we saw. We averaged around 70 to 75. According to the water conditions, as I said, it was pretty rough. So we tried to keep a good average, and it ran well against our competition and the other boats that were in the race. At the point after Maracas, that length of the race, that leg of the race after Maracas on the way to Martelot Grand River, we were in front of Global Warmer, so we were first in the 110 mile an hour class. Overall position, I don't know. I have to think that it was somewhere in the top 10 because we had a number of 95, 80 mile an hour boats, etc. behind us. We passed a couple of them on the way prior to Maracas. And I had a little while on the way to Grand River, a little bit before that. Our fuel pump gave out, and that caused us to shut down.
More unpredictable than rough. It's not consistent. So we got a lot of bounce back of the cliffs and stuff that made it very unpredictable. At first coming out of the Bocas, we were seeing the other boats ahead of us. Fire One was close. We ran and caught them. At that point, we were taking a bit of a beating. And David decided, look, there's nobody else to compete against. That's the higher class. Let's slow it down. Wait and see if Stampede comes along and any challenge comes from them. So we just backed off and kept them in sight up ahead, and nothing materialized from stampede.
Well, then you know when you're coming into Grand Revere, you're on a certain setup with your boat, right? As you turn that corner and go off at 45 or 48 degrees off towards Store Bay, then there's a good 4 or 5 minutes that you have to set the boat up and feel it out and learn it again in that sea condition. Because now the sea is coming from the other direction, the opposite direction. So by the time you get that back in order, you got a few more beats and a few more bruises. So you just hope that you get that right, and it smacks you real hard, you know. You know, it comes at you and gives you a wallop, and then we see this monster sort of splashing ahead of us, but he was staying the same distance all the time. Huh? So we knew we were running the same speed, but every time we tried to speed up, the sea beat us back. That's what you call a sea barrier. So he couldn't go faster, we couldn't go faster. Stuck.
The reality is, you know, we kind of knew he was back there about a mile, you know,
2 miles at most.
You know, and we just, at one point we figured he might be catching up, because when we went, I think when we went wrong Grand River, we saw him a little closer than we thought he should be. And then we started to stretch back a little more. But we realized from when we passed him that it was going to be an easy race and just go slow. He can't run in this. Nobody could run in this. The only boats, you know, boats from further behind the penalty boats, we were wondering if they would come up on Saturday. You know, I mean, we know a lot about the guys with the DBs talk about a lot about running good in the rough, and we tend to see.
It's like I turned to the guy and said, boy, the boat that win this race today definitely deserve this victory.
Oh,
this is a hard race.
This is a great race, really.
Yeah.
The water conditions was really that bad. There was really no pattern that you couldn't see a pattern for any length of time, and you had to take a chance if you did see some patch of water that you could push it in. Because if you can't see a pattern, next thing you know, a piece of water jump up and bite you.
When the sea changes again, as you cross from Grand Revere, you get big sort of swollen seas and choppy seas. And then you get into the shallows, which is welcome to Tobago, right? Then that becomes a washing machine again. That's all over the place. That's because of the shallow, and then the sea kicks up on the shallow ground.
From the time you left Grand River, you know, still you're definitely getting a little calmer. You know, so and then when you got to the actual shallows itself, that was a little bumpy and lumpy, as normal.
As you reach the shallows, you see Tobago, and you say, "Oh, lovely, we reached, man, we reached." You feel relieved, and as you say we reach, you get beat up by this shallow, this washing machine thing, and you just want to get out of that water and get into Store Bay.
I think halfway across though, after pushing the boat for a while, or even maybe getting closer to Store Bay, I started looking at James, or telling James, I say, James, I ain't think we're gonna catch them this year, boy. I think this one going away from us. And maybe we needed the race to be a little bit longer, huh? Another.
And as you get into Store Bay, you say, we reach again. And a nice calm water, and you try and pick up some speed and try and... In fact, I think we actually made some ground on Munster and Store Bay, yeah? But that was short-lived.
And then, as we, you know, from there it started to get a little better going into Store Bay as they get closer to Store Bay, but there was still some left. And I think that's where Solo decided they would press and try and close the gap on us. We pressed a little bit, but they couldn't close the gap. And I mean, we knew, and then we went through Store Bay again. Once again, we saw exactly where everybody was, so we knew exactly the pace to carry. You know, because the last thing we want to do is break. You know, every year we say the same thing: to finish first, you must first finish, and we keep breaking that rule.
Because you feel you reached again in Store Bay, and all of a sudden you suddenly realize you have to go around the whole point again and go into Scarborough, which in itself is like a mini race. That's a whole set of different water again, and that's even worse than the shallows.
Only wishing that, oh God, could they be a little closer? Could we push a little harder now? But at those speeds, to close a gap in those conditions, it really wasn't going to happen at that point. And I think we had resigned ourselves to having to settle for the position we were in, even before we got to Store Bay.
just kept the same pace, you know, just kept on watching the gap. We knew that there was going to have some water between Strawberry and Scarborough, even though we never experienced it before. We've heard everybody talk about it. So we knew that whatever we had to deal with, they would have had to deal with it even a little more, us being in a bigger boat. But, you know, the water wasn't that bad again, but it was still, it wasn't flat like Strawberry. So we just kind of held that.
But I know, I mean, we saw pictures of other years and it was much more ferocious, you know. So we were planning for it to be a little rougher, and then I was quite surprised, really, on that gap from Strawberry to, you know, to Scarborough seemed to be quite reasonable. Scarborough is actually a little rougher than the west coast of, you know, in front of Canoe Bay there. But the only thing we wanted to make sure that we could come around the reef, you know, the reef was a little, you know, dodgy. You know, you see it from charts and you see it from Google and everything, but you really don't see it until you see it in real life.
Yeah. Well, for me, from the time I saw the markers, the finished markers, that was when I first started telling myself, well, look, it looked like we really have it this year. I really can't see the boat breaking at this point. But I already started telling my fellow racers to start celebrating one time, and they were like, no, let's cross the line first. You know, I haven't won one great race before, knew the feeling, and I was excited for them now feeling it, and of course doing it for a second time. But seeing those markers was a real pleasure, and of course coming around them on the last bottom one and then opening it out towards the finish line was a real nice feeling.
Yeah, you know, I mean, if you compare the speed on the first leg coming into Scarborough with this finish leg coming on the same leg,
it's about 15,
it's about 25 mile an hour difference. You know, we were coming through at about 80, 90, and then we come through on the end about 120, 125 at the last minute. I give it. If I could coast across the line, now I'll give it. We're not going to break down this guy, you know. I've had that happen before where I broke down meters on the finish line and it wasn't good. So we don't want to repeat that.
On the finishing, so inside Scarborough. Ooh. Well, Monster tore it up inside there. When we came in, he was rounding his last marker, and we just saw him tearing around to the finish. I think we came in about 2 minutes after him or something, right? And anyway, you're so sore and bruised that you don't want to beat yourself up anymore than you have to. And it's scary inside there because, you know, having done the whole hour and 20 minutes or whatever it was, or an hour and 15 minutes, you don't want to make any mistakes inside there. And it's fraught with mistakes because the sea is still kind of choppy. You know, still, and there's all sorts of traffic in there with the big cat coming in and out and all sorts of things. Like Miss Trinidad a couple of years ago to you know, sank in the swell of the cat near the finish. So we didn't want to do anything like that.
Well, you know, winning great race was something I wanted to do for a long time. So when it actually happened, you kind of wonder what kind of emotion am I supposed to have? You're checking yourself, you have an emotion, but is this all? Or am I gonna freak out? Am I gonna raise it up here? And you just go with the flow, and it was really quite casual and, you know, nice. You know, it just felt good, a nice warm kind of feeling, you know, that good to win. Well, I don't want to talk the point, but the one that was really interesting for us was that when we turned around, our main competition was there. They were right there behind us, and they reached. You know, so that, you know, it's sweet for your victory when your competition break down from mechanical gremlins, you know, that's kind of deep your head.
For me,
you know,
I personally can't remember when last I had a great race when the top of the open class had all the boats in the class finish under full power. Nobody had any issues or problems to say that they had a problem, they broke down. And I was glad to see all the top boats come in, and I was even happier to see that the top 4 boats that came in were all cats. You know, with all this talk and myth about DVs out doing cats in rough water, and we had rough conditions, but they weren't there.
Well, just one more thing. When we got in, the engine was still running, and we couldn't turn it off. So Darren had to jump in the back, open the back covers, jump into the running engine, and cut the wire. That's the only way we could stop. The feelings on the whole race, big relief to get to Scarborough under full power. Fantastic feeling to have finished the race. Not so good not having won it, but you know, well, you can't win them all, right? So, but we're happy that the boys who did win it did a first timer, right? Peter never won a great race, so he got his first lick at the lollipop, and Alfred Bell in the back seat, first ding of the bell. So those two now go on the Wall of Fame.
You know, now we're looking at boats that are of a much higher standard than ever before. We're looking at boats of world-class standards, much better prepared. Practically everybody is using engines and equipment that is built in the States. Nobody's doing anything local. Anybody doing anything local, they're not making it. So times have changed. The level of competition in the standard and the class of boats has improved greatly. So if you win a race, if you win the great race now, you already win a great race.
If you look back there to the history of that class, or let's just call it the biggest class there, when last have they ever had a finish that close?
The boat was handling with absolutely no problems. It was quite flawless. Everybody says, you know, they like this long time thing that cats can't run in rough water. Well, cats are superior in rough water. And the CG on the boat was perfect. It handled flawless. You could put it and do whatever you wanted with the boat. You had total control. Actually going in the section by the reefs wasn't that bad going up past lowlands and stuff. And then coming into Scarborough, as we expected, it picked up a little bit. I mean, we didn't alter speed or anything else because we were already going fairly slow as it was, just to complete the race. But other than that, it was quite an uneventful race. After last year's episode, trying to get the boat ready for the race, and spend the better part of this year going through all the regattas, prepping. We saved the best for last and managed to actually finish the race, and it happened to be the biggest race for the year. The competition is always good. Happy to win the class, definitely. I mean, that was the last thing I said to David before we crossed the line. Was, you know, congrats, David, you just won your class. And competition seems to be in the higher class, so perhaps next year we may step up and see what we could do with those boys.
And we came into Strawberry, and it happened to actually get a little calmer. So we went up to about 106, 107 coming into Strawberry, and went around the point, and seeing Scarborough in sight was really good. When you actually lock onto the marker that you're supposed to be finding, it's always a relief. Getting a little older now, that my eyesight for reading not very good. So I couldn't exactly make out the mark properly on the GPS, even though our GPS is quite big. So I had to take my glasses, my shades off, and hold my shades off, get my glasses out of my pocket. So while I was doing that, the banging, the shades went flying. So when you're strapped in, so you can't get those back. And then I put my glasses on, and put them on. One of the legs is going in my eye, in my mouth. And eventually I got it on my, then I could see the marker. And then obviously I couldn't drive with the glasses on, so I took them off, and I was holding them in my hand. And then I tried to put it back on, and they fell apart. So two pairs of glasses destroyed. And we came in Scarborough probably doing 108. We came in hard. Felt good. It felt real good. It felt good to win our class. It was, I was actually, reports of me dancing on the deck. Well, I don't know how true that is.
This year I was a lot more confident. I guess they all say there is nothing like seat time, and I got another year of seat time. So I knew the boat better, felt a lot more confident in the boat, was able to push it harder. Knew what the boat will do, what it likes, what it doesn't like, It's plenty more familiar with the trim. And I was just able to let the boat fly a lot better off the waves and push that much harder going up the coast than I did last year.
Well, this great race was a fantastic experience for me. All my experience has been racing in the SBI in the States with Snack Attack, which is now Monster. Two totally different boats, of course. Big barge, big catamaran, compared to the monohull 38-foot. But Alan was really patient with me, guided me really well. I think we got the hang of the boat. It showed in a great race, and I came out of that boat just thinking of what a lot of fun it was.
The water conditions this year was pretty rough. Quite a lot of more experienced racers themselves said that they hadn't seen the water like that for a while. It was a challenge. It was a lot of work for Roger to try and keep the boat on the V and drive it aggressively, you know, and it was a challenge for me to try and maintain good trim, and we took quite a pounding.
Coming into Scarborough was just an amazing feeling, and, you know, and especially when you go through that first mark and you just have that lap to do. And yeah, for me, you know, getting out the canopy was a bit of reflection. It was a fantastic experience. I mean, we really pushed hard along the north. Alan just kept pushing and pushing, and we got the momentum, and just the whole feeling of how beautiful the boat was prepared by Marcel and Adrian, you know, how they set it up for us, and that grueling race of 1 hour and 38 minutes. I can't describe it. It was really great.
Well, the water conditions went rough. They were rough. It was bad, it was hard. We never expected it. Well, actually, we did expect it, because Alan did do some research, and just like many people who do windsurfing and the kite gliding type of thing, they check the weather conditions, and he knew that it was going to be rough, so we planned for it, but we didn't expect it to be that rough.
The boat was handling the waters quite good. We expected it to. We were hoping to run it on top of the water a little more than it didn't. And handling-wise, it was great. We had no problems at all. We didn't seem to be slamming too hard.
Speak for yourself.
The punch we didn't have, so we really couldn't skip it from wave to wave on top like how we had planned it. So at that point, we said, look, again, second year, we're gonna make Tobago, let's not mash it up.
Yeah, basically what happened was, as we got the boat to go and she started to run off the waves, every few waves we take a really hard hit. And that was when the carburetor would start bogging, and then it would just start flooding. And then from then, to try and get the engine to run again, it would take about another 10, 15 seconds, and the boat would just keep on launching off the waves. It just really wasn't the most pleasant of experiences. We could have, if everything was fine, we would have gotten her to really run nice over the waves. Unfortunately, we couldn't do anything. Last year, we had too little fuel. This year, we had too much fuel, and it just kept on bogging.
The overall race experience wasn't bad. We would have liked to have been able to push it better, push it harder. We felt helpless at times because we saw the competition coming up, and where we could have pushed it, we tried, but it was not working with us. The boat wasn't working with us this year, and unfortunately, that really put us down. We had to settle for whatever we could have gotten out of her, and she really got us to Tobago. So we're happy for at least the finish in Tobago this year.
After we left Ground, we were coming across to Tobago. And heading to Tobago, the conditions were a little calmer, and Morgan was kind of like telling me, you know, let's go a little faster, and I said, no, son, we still have a long way to go. And we kept the mid-40s, which was very controllable, and we kept it at that all the way to finish the race.
Coming into Scarborough, I was feeling nervous at the same time, but I was very excited knowing that we were going to win the class if everything was to hold out. And with us having open face helmet, every time he turns or I turn, it sounds like almost like a V8 in the intercom coming up behind us, so I'll catch myself looking to see if it was over us, but there was nobody in sight.
Okay, well, this year was my first great race experience. I knew I had a good partner with Marcus, and he's normally throttle man, but I'm the throttle man in this boat. And I know if I was doing anything wrong, Marcus would have given me the right advice to trim the boat out. And I kept on asking him, you know, is everything all right? And he kept on saying, yeah, perfect, perfect. And we just were going up the North Coast pretty level. We felt comfortable. Our object was just to keep a good, steady, competitive pace and see how many boats we can knock off one by one. Going up there, we saw, as I said, we saw Holinaz, we saw Hero come into Stowaway there, We didn't see any others until the end. We realized that, that hammer time had broken down. So that was a great joy for us. Because, you know, we have a little private bet going on inside of our team that the young boys are going to beat the old boys, and we managed to accomplish that. I think that section of the race course was the smoothest, coming out from Stowaway marker around Columbus Point to Scarborough. But for me, it was a wonderful experience. An experience I'll never forget, as it being my first. I can't wait to, you know, gain more experience with the boat, with my crew member, and, you know, hopefully next year we'll be out there stronger, with more experience, and, you know, do a lot better in the overall standings.
I got on the boat and tried to do a dance, but I mean, I felt as though I'd been run over by a herd of elephants, so there wasn't much dancing to do. I went to stand up straight, and that wasn't happening.